Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host, Hilary Roberts. How you doing, Hill?
Hello, everyone. I'm great.
Yeah?
I'm great. I've had my family in town this week, and it's been amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
At the new place, right? Has everybody seen the new house?
Oh yeah, they just think it's awful.
Yeah? Yeah, I bet. No, but has it been nice to have everybody down and just spend quality time? I know you had a really nice dinner with everybody last night. And
I did. We had a great dinner last night. What was so beautiful, as you know, with my history with my dad, it's been, this up and down thing, and he's had his own battles, but he and my stepmom, we were all talking on Wednesday night when I had alone time with them, and he really shared some stuff that he went through growing up, and it really helped me put a lot of things in perspective of how if we don't heal those things, we can pass it along.
Wow. So, there was a lot still unveiled. It's almost kind of like it's amazing that you're able to have those conversations. Because it goes back to it's never too late to be able to communicate, because that brought a lot of clarity together for you, right? It
really did. And then on Thursday, we were having a discussion of some really deep topics and with my cousin and my dad. And normally, he would be very reactive. And it was a very respectful conversation where we didn't all have to agree on points, but it's just been a beautiful, beautiful time. And it's like, I posted something in my stories. It's like, you never know when God's going to do something. And here my dad is 80. And just all this healing, Jay.
Right.
It's just great.
No, it's amazing. And again, that's the beauty of us being able to work our programs, and, it's attraction, not promotion, and, seeing how these things fall into place and look at what is happening in your life, and again, it's taken the time that it's taken, but you're in a place of healing, and you're in a place of being able to, really enjoy each other's company now. And there was a lot of hurt that went on, and you guys are past that. But hard work does pay off, right?
It does. And I'll add one last thing into this, which is Thursday night when the whole group was together, we sat down as if in a support group, and we all talked about what our greatest challenges have been and our greatest blessings. And everybody just opened up, and it was just such a place of heart. And that's where I like to live.
Yeah.
And it was just, again, I just, you never know. And things just happen at unexpected times. I always want them to happen sooner than they do. And it's just been beautiful.
So stoked for you. I really am. And speaking of family, who do we have in here today with us? We got a very special guest.
Go.
My
amazing sister-in-law, who's married to my older brother. They've been married 35 years, and she's known me since I was a little brat teenager.
Let me apologize for you for that right now.
And I've watched her walkout stuff, and that's why I really wanted to have her here today. And I'm just honored and just so thrilled to have my sister-in-law, Lisa Brown Roberts.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thanks.
So good to see you again, Lisa.
Thanks. Great to see you.
It's nice to have you back here and visiting. And welcome to the podcast.
And I apologize to our listeners. This is really emotional for me, so I apologize for all the tears ahead of time.
Well, look, this is a very special day today, and I'm looking forward to learning more about your history and hearing more about Hilary. Obviously, it always brings joy to me to hear more about Hill. But we'll jump right into this if you don't mind. And I would love to know, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, always a writer from the time I was 7 years old. And I have a vivid memory of being in second grade, and my teacher had a shoebox full of story ideas. And I went through the whole box of ideas. I was always writing stories. And I remember one day she said to me, "Lisa, you don't need those ideas anymore. You're already a writer." Oh, and wow. That is, it's
how old were you when that happened?
I was 7.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yeah. So that's all I ever wanted to be.
But what motivated you even at that's such a young age to it's profound to know that you wanted to be a writer at 7 years old. I was just wanting to be outside at that age, but how did what spiked that interest?
It's just, I think part of it was growing up as an only kid, and so not having siblings around to play with, and just I was always reading and always making up stories, and I had a lot of imaginary friends. We were talking about that at dinner the other night. And all my stuffed animals had personalities. And I don't know,
I love it.
always making stuff up. So
Wow, I still do that today.
Yeah, you do.
That's awesome. So I know some of your history. Along the way, you had to go through your own personal healing processes of different situations. You had health issues, battled depression. You've been the daughter of an alcoholic who did get sober. But can you kind of go into some of that for us?
sure. Gosh, where to start, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think I battled depression. Well, I know I battled it for a very long time, but I think even when I was a kid, it impacted me. And I don't think you knew. When you're that young, like what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, my dad did get sober, which was really a blessing. He was in AA for many, many years. And my mom also was in support group.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a really challenging time, especially when I was a senior in high school. He was really struggling. He wasn't drinking again, but he was really struggling. And he was really afraid, I think, that he was going to relapse. And he really just kind of fell apart and was in a mental hospital for a while when I was a senior. And I don't talk about it much, but it was a really pivotal time. Like all my friends were focused on going to college and, doing everything. And I knew I wasn't going away to college because we didn't have the money. That wasn't my plan. But I remember feeling so incredibly separate from all my friends and everybody at that time, because it's like, you guys are partying and doing your thing, and I am terrified for my dad, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I felt that from a younger age, I always felt older than others and just kind of in a different headspace, because growing up with that. And back then, when people were in 12-step programs, it wasn't talked about in the way it is today. I think it was much more secretive. Yes. And so it was something that I never shared with my friends. And just wasn't something we talked about. It was like, Dad has this secret, and it wasn't a bad thing, but it was something that we were supposed to keep really private.
Yeah.
And so I think that was always kind of this special thing about our family that I wasn't supposed to talk about. And yet at the same time, I know that my dad being in recovery made him the person he was, and he helped so many people get sober. And when he died 4 years ago. And his service was just so beautiful. And there were so many people who came and said to my mom and me, "Your dad saved my life." It was so powerful. And he always felt like he didn't achieve much career-wise because he worked for the post office. And he always felt like, he felt lesser than for that. But who he was as a person was, he had a profound impact on people because of helping so many people get sober. I don't even know how many people he sponsored, in the middle of the night call to go help somebody out and all of that. So, I guess all of that just helped me. It gave me a different focus on life because my parents were both very spiritual, and they started that. I mean, from a young age. I was raised in a religious tradition, but more than that, I think all of the 12-step focus is much more. It's not a particular faith tradition, but it's a spiritual focus, and what are your priorities, and where are you getting your power from, and how are you helping others, and all of that. And so that was something that was a huge part of my life from a very young age.
How old were you when your dad first got sober?
8.
You were 8.
Yeah. So I don't have a lot of. I have some memories of him drinking and stuff, and lots of stories I heard over the years. But
was a form of writing, because you said that happened at 7. Was that a way to escape when he was in addiction?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I've never really thought about it.
Yeah. No, I was kind of looking because people, you come up with, you start to manifest your own type of ways to process and deal with stuff, right?
Yeah.
And just was thinking about that. But, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad's passing, but it sounds like he obviously lived a very full life and helped many, many people and left a really amazing legacy behind. But so going through those motions, I mean, I really felt, in that moment when you were talking about, kids that are, graduating, embracing, going into college, and you're really there just wondering about your dad's life when he had that break. What was that like? Because I know there's a lot of people today that are going through dealing with loved ones that are struggling at that exact same spot, right? Maybe it's their husband, their wife, their sister, their sibling, whatever it may be. What was that like for you, and kind of how did you go through that process?
It was very scary. And the hardest part was I felt I could not talk to anybody, even my closest friends, because of the stigma. And I just felt I was bearing this by myself, I mean, obviously my mom was too, but she was, of course, scared in her own place with that. And I just remember feeling so alone and isolated and like, I cannot talk to anybody about this. So that whole kind of that end of that senior year of supposed to be all this, graduation, prom, fun, and all of that for me. And I've kept all my journals forever. And sometimes I go back and look at that. And, that's not where my head was at all. And
what's it like to go back and read that?
Sad, obviously, but I wish I could have told myself it's okay to talk to your friends, because, years later, reconnecting with some of my closest high school friends, one in particular, I shared that and talked to her, and then she shared with me all of this difficult abuse she was experiencing that I never knew, because she didn't feel like she could tell anybody. And we were like so close, and we both had these big things happening in our lives, but we just felt we couldn't share those things. And I think that the world has changed for the better so much since I was a teenager, that people do share those things. And that's so important, because that's where you get healing and help. And trying to carry those burdens by yourself, it'll just eat you up. And it's so hard.
It's so true.
So Hilary brought up the with depression, right? That you struggled with that. Was that impacted from later on in the high school when you were going through this with your father, or did it happen prior, or where did the depression come in?
Well, I know that I watched you and you had fibromyalgia, and I remember you were just stuck. I remember this, but this was a little bit later, because I met you when you were in college. When did you meet Eric?
Well, we met freshman year of college.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So you met her as this was going on, right?
Well, a little bit after the high school year, but then and my head was.
Hey, you were in Mars at that time.
I was having a craniorectal infarction.
You were giving yourself a lobotomy.
So as far as when the depression kind of started,
just wanted that. Just get a full scope of the story.
I think it really started probably maybe shortly after that, and just. My dad was still really struggling. He came home, but he was having a really rough time. And there was just, there was a lot going on. And I met your brother at that point, and I was falling in love with this goofball. And he is.
Yes, you'll be meeting him next week's podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
I think it really got worse once Eric and I were out on our own. We moved to California from Colorado when we were very young, like after freshman year of college. We just were like, we're going to California. And in my head, I thought it was going to be this beautiful dream, and like, I'll finish college and it'll be great. And of course, that wasn't it. We had to work very hard, and we were so broke. And then I knew, like, all my friends were in college having fun and doing all this great stuff, and I was working, 2 jobs, and Eric was working 2 jobs, and we were just trying to pay the rent and, keep our heads above water financially. And it wasn't like the California dream I was picturing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I really started to get, I think the depression was really kicking in then, because looking around and going, well, is this we're going to be just struggling like this? And when am I going to write? Because that was still my driving focus.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make that happen? And then feeling just really overwhelmed and intimidated by how would I start that? How do I do that?
So let's fast forward a little bit. So I know that you ended up moving back to Denver, and because I think of the expense of California, the earthquake that happened, all that stuff. So then you're back in Denver, but I remember watching and then you had Ethan,
Mm-hmm.
my nephew. Not your son, but my nephew.
Yeah. How old's Ethan?
He's 21.
Nice.
He's amazing. He's an amazing kid. Young man, excuse me. But I remember watching you like struggling with some depression and struggling with your, if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then how you maybe segue into how it changed for you when you started writing, because that's what inspired me, not feeling like I was too old for my music, which was huge.
Yeah, I was absolutely, stuck and sad and working jobs I didn't like, and feeling like every year this dream was slipping away, like, oh, I thought I'd be published by the time I was 30. It didn't happen. By the time I was 40, it didn't happen. And just feeling like, this dream that had lived inside of me from the time I was a small child, I just was like, it's not going to happen. And the depression, I think, was really tied into a lot of that. I don't think I realized it at the time, how much of that was connected to not pursuing, I believe, I think we all have our purposes and things we're meant to do and who we are. And I read this great book a long time ago called The Soul's Code. And I remember that made an impact on me, like the idea that there is this thing inside of you. And if you don't honor that, and if you don't pursue that, you're going to be miserable. Yeah. And so I started, I had always been involved in writers groups, kind of peripherally. I'd go and I'd just soak it up and be there, and I would write, but I would never share what I wrote with anybody. I was absolutely terrified of reviews, of feedback, of people telling me I sucked.
Yeah.
That was really scary, but I always wanted to tell stories, but I didn't want any negative feedback, which you get a lot of once, you start in there.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. But, and I was suffering a lot. We thought it was fibromyalgia at first. I was in physical pain all the time. There were days I just couldn't get out of bed, and eventually got, I think, correctly diagnosed as having rheumatoid arthritis. And that was incredible, because then I got on medication that really was helping with the physical pain. And I started seeing a really wonderful therapist who really helped me work through a lot of my stuff.
Right.
And I really started talking with her about the writing, and this dream I've always had. And she just guided me, I think, in a beautiful way. I think when you find a therapist that you click with, and that's just, there's nothing like that. And I felt like she really saw me and saw who I was and saw all that was there. And through my work with her, I decided, if you're going to do this, you better get off your butt and go, because at that point, I was probably in my mid-40s. And okay, so you're not going to be some young wonderkind who publishes her first book and hits the New York Times or anything. That ship has sailed, okay, and I'm at peace with that now. It took a while, but I'm fine with that. So I just really got into it. I found a great critique group of other authors who'd all been published, and they really helped mentor me, helped me develop a thicker skin with feedback and revisions and realizing this is just how it goes.
Yeah.
So my first book was published two months before I turned 50.
Wow. Wow. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
How Not to Fall in Love.
But she doesn't. But now you have how many books?
6.
She's got 6 books,
Dang.
and they're
Young adult, contemporary. There's usually a big romantic component.
which I like.
But yes, well, me too.
I love it.
That's funny though, because the first book is so much about dads and daughters, and I really see that now. And it's about a girl whose dad disappears. You know, and I read it now and go, well, gee, it's pretty obvious what you were working out. And, you know, they reconnect by the end of the story. And it's still probably the favorite, in some ways, the favorite book. First book of the heart, all of that, you know.
Yeah.
But
That's incredible. So when did a couple things to pull this together for me is so when did your dad end up, did he ever make progress with the stuff that he was going through? Did he come out on the other end?
yeah, he did. And I think by reconnecting in the 12-step world and being engaged in that community.
He made it out on the other side.
Yeah, I would say so. Although my dad always struggled with depression.
Right.
I mean, that was a lifelong problem for him. And it was, you know, growing up in a place where people are addicted, of course, is very difficult. But the depression piece too, whether or not that's part of an addiction or just depression, which is not a just, but you know, that's really difficult too.
Yeah.
Because someone who is in such a low place and thinks so badly of themselves, when you can see they're a really wonderful person, and you know, that's really hard too.
Well, it has a tremendous impact on the people around them.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
being you, your mother, I mean, whoever else was around that, it's not only is that person suffering, but it's directly impacting the individuals around them. Right. So that's, you endured a lot. I mean, through all those, you know, through the different chapters of life. And when did things for you, I mean, because you guys were in California, moved back, I know you fast forwarded it for us, you went back to Colorado, but would you say you saw a real turn in your life in your 30s to 40s, even though your books weren't being published yet and things like that, but where was that turning point for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I had my son when I was 35, which was, you know, amazing, wonderful thing. And I think becoming a parent probably really made me look at the world in many, you know, very different way. And also, again, like, how do I want to be the best parent I can be? And, you know, like you always say, Hilary, put the mask on yourself first.
Right.
Yeah. Like they tell you in the airplanes, right? And that's, I think, literally what I did. I think what my husband did is, you know, let's get our act together. Yeah. Individually, as a couple, all these things. Yeah. You have this life and new life. It's like, oh my gosh. And also, like I said, working with a therapist. So I think probably 40-ish, maybe, you know, and I know so many young people are like, oh gosh, you know, and I might act together by the time I'm 30 or whatever. And it just, life doesn't work that way. Maybe it does for some folks. But for me, it's been a process of 2 steps forward and 3 back and up and down and growth and pain. But it's also what makes it so beautiful.
Yeah. And I love how, because you guys, well, you got individual help and you also got help together, which we're going to be talking about for next week's podcast. But I just love that therapy component and the things that you've done to help yourself with that, and that we can't always do it alone. We always talk about that. And you picking up those tools. And what are some of the tools that you use today to help, like when you talk about taking those steps back, like what do you do to get you back? Because, you know, you're doing so much better than that I've seen. You guys have no idea, our listeners, how she was so depressed, and she inspired me to start singing because of her putting out her book. And that's why I started doing my stuff. I'm like, wow, if she can do this, I can too. And that was such a big deal. So what are some things you do today?
Well, and thank you. That's always so amazing when you say that to me, because I don't think of myself as somebody who inspires other people.
Yeah, you do. And you did for me.
Well, thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thanks. And that's something that I would like to do eventually, is really find some way to inspire people like over 50 to really pursue their dreams, because I just feel like it is never too late. It just isn't. And it's so easy in our society, in our culture, that just worships young people and young successes and overnight successes, to think, well, I didn't do that, so it's already too late.
Right.
Well, right now with people with COVID, and this is another reason, see, right now on this podcast, you're inspiring those. A lot of people feel defeated. This whole pandemic has just ripped people to shreds. They're like, I'm this age now, my whole career, my business has gone down the tubes. What do I do now? And here you are, and you started that later in life. And before there was ever a pandemic, there were people that, I forgot the painter, but there was a painter that painted from 70 to the day they died at 77, and they said those were the best years of their life, and they were this incredible artist. And so, if right now on the Let the Journey Begin, you're inspiring the listeners. This is your first gig.
Yeah. Right.
You're right.
Right. Yeah. So I'd be curious. So when you do run into those hard times, and those, we obviously still struggle. Even though we've made it on the other end, right? What are some of the tools that you have to, if you get into a depressive state, or you get back into, some of that stinking thinking, what are some ways that you get out of it?
Well, relationships are just key for me. My husband, but also really good friends. And particularly, I have several really close author friends who I think, when you're in whatever field you're in, having people who do that same gig,
yeah,
right,
who understand it on a very deep level, that much as your friends and family support you, they don't know what that's like to write a song, to produce a song, to write a book, and to have people who are close to you who understand all the nitty gritty. I always call it like making a book is making a sausage, all that ugly stuff you don't want to see that happens behind the scenes. And to have those people who I can go to and just hash it out, and we can whine together and cheer each other up and laugh, and I can text them and whatever, that is huge. I think if I didn't have that, I might have given up, because writing is really hard. It's a very, it's not easy, and going through multiple revisions of books and starting over and getting things to the point where it works with your editor, your publisher, or if you're independently published, you feel like it's ready to go. It's a lot, and it's a lot of solitary work.
Yeah.
A lot of solitary work. And so if I didn't have those close friendships, I think it would have been really tough. I also love to be outside and just in nature. I'm not like a mountain climber, even though I live in Colorado. But I love to just go for long walks. That's very grounding to me. Just being out in the sun. Sometimes if I'm in my office working too long on a manuscript, and it's just been like 10 hours at the computer, and I'm just burnt and I can't go. It's like, you got to get out of here and walk and be out in nature and play with the dogs and just, simple stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I love your dogs.
Me too.
So we have an action for the day that we give all of our listeners. So if you were to give somebody out there right now that's hurting, feeling like that they've given up or there's no hope, what action for the day, what inspiration would you give? One thing.
Something I've found really powerful for me is journaling. And I find it really, really wonderful to be able to go back and read, because I can see that I got through these really tough times and I came out on the other side, and I can read about that. And it reminds me, okay, you survived that. So maybe just, and not to see journaling as this big thing where you just have to write pages and pages, but just maybe write down where you are, your thoughts and your struggles, and just let some of that stuff out that you need to, and also write about where you want to be. Maybe start writing a vision of that you can look at and believe that it'll come true.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Well, I think there's been some great things in here, because there was another thing, you've had given lots of nuggets, which is how this, like, we have a thing that we talk about, that we're sick as our secrets, and not being able to communicate, that isolation and getting out of isolation and getting to having a group of people that we trust and can lift us up, the accountability people. Like, there's so many things that, even though you're not like an alcoholic or a drug addict, but you've suffered from some of that, and all of it kind of just intertwines anyway. And so it's lovely to hear, what you've walked out, and hearing your heart. And
thank you so much for coming on.
You're a beautiful woman. You're a beautiful woman.
Being so transparent, and so open with this. I know it's not easy. Just know though that you are impacting a lot of people. There's so many people that are going through this and don't feel like they do have an outlet, even though the world has changed for the better in the stigma associated areas. There's still a ton of it out there, and a lot of people do still hold it in. So again, by you speaking out about this, it lets people know they're not alone in those areas. So really, really appreciate that. And, for congratulations on the books. That's phenomenal. Like, what a huge success. I'm excited actually, having a daughter now. I'm going to have to read How Not to Fall in Love, because you said it's a dad and a daughter. But where can people find you? Where can people, if people want to learn more about you, or, find your books, where can people go?
Social media, Lisa Brown Roberts, lisabrownroberts.com, Twitter. I like Instagram the best. I have the most fun there. So.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate your story.
Thank you so much.
Really inspiring.
It's been great. Love you too.
Thank you.